Hi, my name is Angus Brown. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Centbee. I am also the chairman of the Technical Standards Committee, which is a part of the Bitcoin Association. The TSC is very pleased that we have taken on new members to join the committee. The committee consists of volunteers like myself who have a mission to improve the interoperability across the ecosystem of all of the participants in the ecosystem. So to do that, we need to be representative of the ecosystem. We need to have people on the committee who are technical experts. We need to have people who are business experts, people who understand industry lobbying, people who understand the process of creating standards. And so we are always looking for good, competent people who are able to provide assistance to the committee in their job. Our job is creating standards, providing standards which are tools to developers to be able to easily integrate into the BSV ecosystem and to be able to provide solutions working with other people in the BSV ecosystem. So we have 3 new members that have joined us, and we're very excited about the range of skills that they would be able to provide to the committee. The TSC is comprised of various individuals with various tenures. So the typical approach in the TSC is that people have a fixed tenure of 2 to 3 years that they will spend serving on the TSC and volunteering on the TSC. We have a natural approach where at the end of the tenure the person can stand down or can stand for re-election as a new member. We as the TSC would then consider whether that person has contributed usefully to the committee, is still prepared to work well with the committee, and has value to add. So we will always consider reapplications, and we're very pleased to see old members of the committee be reappointed back to the committee through a formal, structured, thoughtful process. And also very good to see fresh blood coming into the committee, where we have new people with new experiences. Some of those people have great technical depth that have come in. I don't want to talk about each of their individual strengths and weaknesses, but they have great skills in different areas. And we need that, because the Technical Standards Committee is not just a single group of the most advanced technical knowledge in the industry. The technical knowledge in the industry sits out in the developers. It sits in those companies that are actually creating and building work. The TSC's role is to review requests for standards, identify potential standards that would make their lives better. So we need some technical expertise in the committee to help us understand some of these problems, but we also need some business skills to understand whether that problem is the most material problem to be solved now, and we also need process and business experience to be able to govern that well. Now, what does governing a standard mean? It means when a standard proposal comes up, is it actually of sufficient quality that it identifies what is the problem, for whom is the problem a problem, and what is a potential solution to that problem that is not already solved out there. So that's what we would do by assessing the quality of that. We then form a working group. And a working group is actually just a group of people who are interested in solving this problem together. They often have different views, they have different experiences, but they're brought together by the need to solve a problem. And the working group will then consider and debate and argue until they come up with what they think is a good standard. That good standard then gets put out for public review, where it is now out in the wild. Everyone can comment on whether that standard is reasonable, often identifying little improvements that need to be made. We will take those improvements in, we'll consider it, and then the TSC, through a fairly structured process, will then actually publish the standard. That standard is now out there for adoption, and that adoption is then determined by the industry. People out there, developers, entrepreneurs, saying, this standard helps me make my business work faster, it helps my code run better and faster, and helps me interoperate with other people in the ecosystem and outside the ecosystem. And it also helps the professionalism of what I do, because I'm using a standard. That also makes my business look more professional and helps me maybe land investors and helps me with my discussions with business partners. So all of this is the process that is done to create a standard, and so the skills we need across that group are the technical skills and the business skills, which we're very pleased to have in our TSC members. There are many challenges that are facing the community. Those are technical challenges, business challenges, funding challenges, talent challenges, and all of those challenges are what you as the audience out there, the development community, the entrepreneurs out there, you see those challenges. You're identifying solutions out there. We're also experiencing and observing those challenges as members of the wider community as well. Each of the TSC members has a job. They're actually busy doing something at the same time, so they are very much participants in the challenges that you are all experiencing as well. So we see those challenges, we recognize them, and we are also trying to identify which are the most urgent challenges to be fixed. So we work with miners, we work with processors, we work with wallets, we work with developers, we work with the academics, we work with some of the big firms, and we pick out what are the things that we think are the most important. We build up a little roadmap, and that roadmap is really saying which are the challenges we think could be addressed now and which can be addressed later. So we have picked out some more urgent challenges that we're working on, and if you want to know what the current priorities are, go to the TSC website. On the website you'll see the emerging standards, and those will give you an indication what are the things that we are working on, the proposals. You'll see some of the standards that are already finished and published, and actually, like any standard that's published, it's never final. There's never a piece of code in a standard that is absolutely fixed. It is always still a work in progress. So we are taking inputs. We will reopen any particular standard. Like right now, we are reopening the Merkle proof standard because we're finding some implementation improvements that we can actually make. And that's great, because that's feedback from people who are actually using standards, and we can take that feedback, improve it, make it a 1.1 version, and roll it back out, hopefully with implementation examples as well, so that you as the community can see that the standards are actually living creatures. Because a standard is about what you find valuable. The TSC is not here to enforce a standard. The enforcement of the standard is done by the market. The free market out there decides what standards live and die. So it's really important for us that we're able to put standards out there and listen to your feedback as to what standards need to move. And more than just standards, we're also looking to see what are the tools and tips and bits of information that will help you as developers and as entrepreneurs actually advance the field, advance your particular idea. So we have a bit of a vision that's a bit wider than just a formal standard, because our mission is really to help everybody in the BSV ecosystem to move forward one step at a time to get to that world of adoption that we're aiming for. An area that we find of interest is the fact that although the protocol might be set in stone, as we've heard over there, and the Bitcoin Association's role is to safeguard and protect that protocol and to ensure that it is stable and strong, the role of the Standards Committee is to work with that, but to propose standards that are not necessarily set in stone. We are not enforcers of a standard. We are suggesters of proposed solutions which people can use. And we're quite willing to move a standard, to adjust a standard based on what you and the community say, how a standard should be useful to you. So tell us about standards that you think are necessary, standards that need to move, and we can work on that and we can help to move a standard and to make a standard useful for what it's doing. Technical standards are just a document which articulates a particular solution to a particular problem and gives a bit of guidance towards how it should be solved at the code level. We don't typically write code. We actually leave it up to the developers to write the code. There might be specific examples of how the code could be written or pseudocode that is put in there. But really we're trying to articulate a standard that is useful for people to be able to take forward. So when we have those standards that we put out there, we recognize that there are many different people who would look at a standard, some of whom are developers who just say, give me the code, I'll take the code and I can use it, for example, like Paymail, to be able to communicate cross wallets for addresses. There are other audiences such as regulators who want to see, is this field mature enough that it's got to the point that it actually has a need for standards? That means that there's enough developers in the community that has actually got a rich ecosystem of participants, and it's a signal to regulators that there is a community of strength and a community that's professional enough to consider the importance of standards and interoperability. One of the audiences is also business people who are looking to invest in this community and decide to commit their life to building a business. They want to know that when they bring tech teams together, that tech team can get started quickly without having to rebuild everything from scratch. And don't have to build the token protocol, you don't have to build those sort of things in place. You can just grab the standards that are out there. So it's a signal also to investors and business people that the ecosystem is mature. If you think of the TSC as a business, what's our product? Product is the standards. How do you know whether your product is actually being used? That's any businessman's consideration. What is the metrics? What is the actual usage of your product? How many buyers are actually taking your product and using your product? And that's a very important question for us to consider as the TSC. We are not just a process, a committee that makes sure that you take in input standards and you make sure you generate published documents at the end of the year. It would be easy to consider that to be the whole job, but it isn't the whole job. It's an important part of doing the process of standard setting well. But the actual output of any form of standards committee is standards that are actually used and adopted. So we are now starting the process of looking at the levels of adoption. Where are our standards actually being used? And that is actually something we have to engage with developers to look at where are our standards being used. And it's not easy to just know that because we're not a license organization. We don't get pennies every time a standard is actually implemented. It is very much an open environment where we would put those standards out there and then people would take them, work on them, develop them, use them. So we actually need feedback from the community as to where are standards being adopted and where do they need more work. Where's a standard that isn't actually solving a problem? So you tell us where the standards are working and where the standards are not working, and we could use that information to actually keep refining our product and communicating our product standards to all of you so that you can go, okay, there's something there that I find useful. So this is a work in progress and we really appreciate all of the effort that you would put in to take these products that we have, buy them, use them, and make the entire ecosystem much richer.